Good evening, everyone. I'm Nick Newmeyer bringing you a special edition of the Center Cup podcast. It is currently 7:47 at the time of recording. The TGL Finals have just concluded. LA have won 2 to nothing over the Jupiter Lynx. All in all, not a very interesting final. I think everybody was expecting a little bit more firepower from Jupiter today. We saw yesterday's match really went down to the wire, came down to the final hole. Um, today just really wasn't that. Today just wasn't really that special. Jupiter kind of came out firing at the beginning, but LA really rallied back. And once it got to singles, I mean, it only took one match of singles for it to be over, basically. So we'll definitely recap how the match actually went first and foremost. But the big storyline of tonight and the reason why we are bringing you this emergency episode of the podcast is the return of Tiger Woods. We saw last night that he had mentioned at the end of the game on Monday that he was going to play. He we didn't think we would see him in TGL. He's been hinting at, I'm trying to come back. I'm trying to because we know it's all about Augusta. We know that that is the end goal, and we know he's trying to ramp himself up to be ready for the Masters. We didn't know if we would see him at a Champions Tour event. We didn't know if he would see him at TGL, but he made it clear last night that we would be seeing him in the second edition of the TGL Finals. And so that is what everybody came to see. That was at 6 o'clock. We were glued to our TV to see Tiger Woods take some tee shots. And honestly, he looked good. He looked really good. And it's kind of tough in this scenario because obviously, so okay, you know what? Let's just go and let's look at what actually happened. So the first hole they tie, second hole in the caverns. They both groups or excuse me, both groups hit the fairway. Tiger finds himself with about 280-ish out from the pin. And he takes a 3 wood and it is on a beautiful line. Like he hit an absolute amazing shot, lands just almost pin high just off to the right. If there was ever an instance of how we were going to see Tiger's full swing and being able to like really exercise the power, that was it right there. That was really good to see. Jupiter ended up winning the hole. Um, Jupiter ended up taking a 2-0 lead into the sixth hole, where LA would take the lead based off, or they would use the hammer and took the lead there. They ended up winning the next four holes, the ninth hole with a hammer as well to get to singles, where Justin Rose they played a triple hammer. Um, so I think Jupiter threw the hammer and then LA threw the hammer as well. So the hole ended up being worth 3 points. Justin Rose made eagle. It was LA's third eagle in a row. So they're so I think 8, 9, and 10 were all eagles for them, and it was the first time in a TGL match that all, or excuse me, it's the first time in a TGL match where one team had three eagles in a singular day. And so by accepting this, so like LA threw the hammer when Max Homa, who missed the fairway off the tee, which forced him to lay up, he found himself with about 14 feet for birdie, whereas Justin Rose just piped it down the fairway and then found himself with he hit it to like 3 feet with his second shot with a 3 wood. It was perfectly carried the ridge, like got the perfect downslope. It was one of the most beautiful shots I've seen that wasn't a hole out on TGL. It sets up the win perfectly. And so I was not a fan of Jupiter accepting the hammer, if I'm being honest. I thought that it was sort of reckless to accept. I understand why they accepted the hammer. They needed the points. They were trying to get themselves back. They had a good look at birdie. If Rosie missed his eagle putt, then they could have tied the hole and they could have saved themselves. So I understand why they didn't want to. I understand why they didn't want to simply concede the hole, but at the end of the day, Homa missed the putt, and then it ended up being 9-2, to which mathematically LA won the hole. And so all in all, it wasn't really an interesting match. It wasn't really anything special in terms of what the fans wanted to see. There was thoughts that, maybe LA, or excuse me, maybe Jupiter could rally and force a game three that would have happened immediately afterwards and really sort of made the SoFi finals actually worth something. Unfortunately, that just wasn't the case, and um, LA Golf Club is now the winner. So Justin Rose, Sahith Theegala, Tommy Fleetwood, Colin Morikawa couldn't be here tonight because he's still recovering from his back that he tweaked in the first round of the Players. But they did reveal on the broadcast that Colin Morikawa will be competing at the Valero Texas Open. So he will be making one start before the Masters, which is really good for him. Nevertheless, those four are the TGL champions for the second year. Um, I feel like my stance on TGL has kind of changed over the last year. I kind of just saw it as, just background noise, like it's a simulator league, like it's nothing very special. Like I'll just put it on the TV while I'm doing work as background. Like it'll be like just while I'm cooking, just have it in the background. But I feel like I've really changed my stance. I feel like they've changed their stance too in trying to find an identity. I feel like they've definitely loosened what they were trying to present themselves in terms of how serious they take themselves. And I don't mean that in the sense that that they're not trying or anything like that. They're very much competitive. You could see, like, even before he stepped up to the first tee, like Tiger was sweating bullets. Like you would have thought he was in a sauna, but you could definitely tell, like, even just how Jupiter reacted after the loss. They went to interview them, and they asked Max Homa, what are you thinking right now? How do you feel? And he's like, it sucks. I'm not going to give you any more. Was just really pissed. And then Tiger, of course, gave the diplomatic answer of, we worked hard. It obviously didn't work out. Happy to be out here. Like great group of guys. We gave it our all. Yeah, blah blah blah. But you could tell they were not happy at all about the loss, and they felt that they absolutely could have contended today. But so they do take it seriously. You could tell that everybody there, there was thoughts at the beginning of this whole thing, like how serious are they actually going to take this? Is just going to be like a weekend sim golf league. But at the end of the day, you could really tell the competitive fire is there and that people actually care about this and are trying to compete, even though it's not outdoors. But so what I mean when I say they're taking themselves a little less seriously is the holes that they're playing. I think last year it was a lot of just like regular golf holes. Like they had the arrow, like the long par five that was like the massive arrow over waters. Like that was probably the most extreme that was probably the most extreme hole they had last year. This year it's completely different. I feel like this year they have the signature holes. Like each team has a hole that is unique to them. So I like that. It gives them kind of like a home course dynamic, even though they're all playing in the same stadium every single time. Another thing they do very well is they brought in some more like funky course designs this year. So whereas last year they were sort of playing on more realistic courses, they were playing on an apocalypse hole. Like I think the premise of the hole was, what if the zombies won? Like it was very um it was just like a post-apocalyptic, like everything was just destroyed type thing. I think it was the first hole today, it was like all, instead of water hazards, it was lava hazards. And then I already mentioned the cavern hole where they're playing completely inside a cave. And then the best hole, like I personally think it is the coolest hole in TGL, and nobody can convince me different. It's Stinger. It's where you basically have to in order to hit your tee shot, you have to just hit a low stinger under a cliff. And naturally, it was named after, Tiger basically made that shot famous throughout his career. And, of course, he was the one that took the tee shot on Stinger tonight and just absolutely blast. I think he was probably like a good 30 yards ahead of Tommy Fleetwood. Like he just hit a beautiful, and he looked a little awkward with the stinger. Like we saw in his practice round, or in his practice tee shots, he looked kind of funky on the stinger. And then it didn't really look like a very fluid, comfortable swing on it didn't look like a very fluid, comfortable swing during the competition as well. But, that's I guess to be expected. I don't think we've ever really seen him hit like a 0 degree launch angle shot with his driver ever. He was usually using his 3 iron on that shot. So never really saw him take driver with that shot. It was very interesting to see. But so that's some of the things that I think TGL does very well. Obviously, he's not on this call right now, but to quote our good friend Will, TGL, it knows what it is, and it doesn't try to be anything more. That's something we've been saying since the very beginning. It does a very good job of making a competitive atmosphere, but also maintaining that like we are in a simulator and we are just we have some luxuries with technology that we aren't necessarily able to do outside. So I thought it was really cool. I think like I said, I've definitely changed my stance on TGL this year. I feel like I've been a bit more willing to watch it, a bit more, I right before I came down here to record, they had the commercial saying like rep your TGL team at the PGA Superstore or whatever. I really want there to be a Chicago team. Obviously I have my players that I like that I will root for their teams, but I really want there to be a Chicago team that I could root for. So that's my little TGL rant, but so now let's look at Tiger and let's look at how he did today. So I already mentioned his first shot with the 3 wood, putting it greenside. I thought it was a great shot. It was definitely um, I don't know. I haven't seen him take a full swing shot. They mentioned it's his first competitive full swing in over a year. Um, so we haven't really seen him. So his last start was the 2024 Open Championship, I believe. Let me confirm that. 2024. Yes, so he hasn't competed in a professional event since July 2024 at the Open Championship. Um, he missed the cut at the PGA and the US Open as well. He made the cut at the Masters in April, which it set the record of 24 cuts in a row. Did end up finishing last in the field, but nevertheless, that is Tiger Woods' last made cut on in any competitive event was almost 2 years ago to the day at Augusta. And so, we haven't really seen him in that competitive setting. We didn't really know what to expect. We still don't really know what to expect, honestly. That was why I was hoping that Jupiter could kind of clutch out and bring it to a third match, in order to so that we could just see more of Tiger. I feel like that's probably, if you look at um the broadcast stats, like the viewership totals. ESPN publishes them, and it's no coincidence that the TGL events that have Tiger playing in the field, or even just he obviously hasn't played the entirety of this season, but just having Tiger in the field is so important. Like even when he's not playing, he's still there holding the flag, like he's giving interviews. You still get to see Tiger Woods on your TV. So anytime Jupiter is playing, it's almost double the viewership totals. And so I think I put it on my Twitter as we were, or X, whatever, as I was watching, I said, anytime you get to see Tiger Woods on your TV, it's a gift and it shouldn't be taken for granted. So I think I was very happy to see him play. I think just overall looking at the game, he had some very good shots. I think there's the 3 wood that I already mentioned. His next shot was a wedge that kind of airmailed the green. He's done that once or twice on TGL. Putting, I thought he looked very, very good, with the exception of one where he lipped out from a little under 3 feet and he was pissed off. You could like, he was not happy that he missed that putt. You could tell, like, if you had any doubts on the competitive state of Tiger Woods, I, I want you to go and look at that putt because it was very much, he was very mad that he missed it. And, you could tell that he really cared, I guess. Um, I don't know why I'm spending all this time analyzing a 3 foot putt. Maybe that's indicative of Tiger Woods' game in the first place. But just overall, the full swing looked really good. The putter, I thought his speed on the greens, they mentioned on the broadcast that he didn't really have the experience on the TGL greens this year. He was sort of learning for the first time, just like playing them competitively for the first time. So I thought his speed control was really, really good. Um, he had a pretty good shot at the bunker too. So overall, in the small sample size that we saw him, I thought, it's the same thing where, we don't see him after a while and then we see him at the PNC and he's still hitting 300-yard drives and we're like, oh, well, he hasn't missed a beat. Like you could tell he puts a lot of effort into his rehab and he tries to get out there. So that's kind of the TGL recap. That's kind of the recap of everything from tonight. My question is, where does this lead for the future? Um, it's no secret that Tiger Woods wants to compete at the Masters. We don't know if he's going to. He hasn't made an official comment as to whether or not he will. Um, we ever since so like the longer he went without playing, and it's so like we thought at the beginning of the year, like he's obviously 50 now. He's qualified for the Champions Tour. He we thought it would be a great scenario for him to just practice, play with a cart, and be able to like stay in shape and just do little tune-ups before the majors. Unfortunately, his body has not permitted him. It has not permitted him to do that, and so we did not know. We haven't seen him on TGL. We haven't seen him on the Champions Tour. We didn't know if there was going to be a time where he could tune himself up and play. And I'm going to be honest, I wouldn't even call this a tune up. He hit like 4 full swings and a couple putts. Like this is not nearly a competitive tune-up that you would need in order to play Augusta and have any desire to compete. Um, Now I know Tiger has the drive, he has the passion and the competitive fire to compete at Augusta. And that's where I bring to the question of what do we do with Tiger Woods in 2026? Because we've seen ever since the car accident, it's been sort of this like the same cycle of he makes an appearance at the PNC. So he plays the PNC with Charlie, which he didn't do this year, by the way. So we're kind of breaking from the norm a little bit there. I think his injuries, he had like a torn Achilles. He had several like back surgeries. This is nothing new for Tiger Woods, but so he did not play at the PNC, did not play at the Hero. But what we've seen in past years was he plays the PNC with Charlie, um, makes an appearance at the Hero, just shakes a few hands, kisses a few babies, like is tournament host Tiger Woods. And then, he gives a press conference at the Hero and he talks about how he has a plan to get healthy and he wants to play more than one tour event in like I think it was 2 years. I think it was 2024 where he said he wants to play one tour event a year or one tour event a month. And I think we all were like, "Oh my gosh, like that would be incredible," but we never saw that. The body never held up. And so after the Hero, then we don't see him for another like 3 months and he goes and tries to ramp himself up for Augusta. And the next time we see him is at Riviera at the Genesis. And if we're lucky, he's in the field as a player. But the past few years, he hasn't been able to play. And so he still presents the trophy. We see him in the booth. He talks a little bit. But other than that, we don't see him before the Masters. And so then he goes and tries really hard to ramp himself up for the Masters, either aggravates something or just isn't able to practice as much as he can, gives it his all to compete at the Masters anyway, and still shows up, makes the cut, doesn't really do anything on the weekend, never really has a chance to win, but it's still great to see Tiger Woods there. Like, I love it, don't get me wrong. After that, we see him sort of ramp up for the next majors. Then he historically has played the PGA. or he's played the Open, um, not really fared very well over there, plays the PGA, gets injured, and then is unable to play the US Open, and then we don't hear from him again until the PNC, and then we complete the cycle again. And so I forget what year it was. I think it was the first Masters he played after the car accident. And they asked him, he said before where he's not going to show up to a tournament if he doesn't think he could win. And they said, if you're here, do you think you could win? And he said, immediately, like, yes, obviously I'm here. I think I can win. And so he still shows up to these events, I would assume with the confidence that he could win. But, I understand why Tiger Woods wants to play at Augusta National. He's a historic figure there. He's a legend of the game. Like, of course he wants to play at these majors. I just have to wonder if, especially now, like this rehab that he's been on has taken him way longer than he anticipated, way longer than anybody anticipated. He has not played in a competitive tournament for almost 2 years at this point. And outside from like a few swings at TGL, like there's nothing. I feel like that's the one thing of like when we've seen him play the majors like once every like 3 months, the one thing that you see is that, getting up and down, short range putts, like just you could see that there's a competitive rust with him. And it just makes it a bit more difficult for him. And so I he's so at this exact moment, he has not commented on to excuse me, to my knowledge, maybe in the last 20 minutes, maybe something's changed. I don't know. But he has not made any comment about playing the Masters. He's on Augusta's website. He's on the Masters website as, in the field. So he has made no indications that he's not going to play. He's also made no indications that he is going to play. But he's at this point has not made a decision on whether or not he's going to play. If it were up to, well, it's not up to me, but if you want my take on this, I don't think he should play in the Masters. As much as I want to see Tiger Woods competing in the Masters, I really don't think he should be there. I think, and it's not that he doesn't deserve to be there. He's most certainly earned his way there. He can play whenever the hell he wants. He's Tiger Woods. He is a past champion, is a legend of the game. He absolutely deserves to play. I just don't think it's smart for him to play. I think he has virtually no experience. He has not had any competitive experience over the last 2 years, and he's not ready. I can't speak to the swing. I can't speak to the practice he's been doing, but I simply think it would be foolish for him to rush and try to get back to Augusta and that's the one thing he said from the start is when he can't play anymore, you're not gonna see he's gonna disappear. Like he's not gonna be this like ceremonial golfer that, is gonna play the Thursday, Friday, and you'll give him a little standing ovation as he walks down the 18th fairway to miss the cut by like 10 strokes. He's not gonna be that ceremonial golfer. And so I hate to say it, but the last few times he's been at the Masters, he might not want to be a ceremonial golfer, but he's kind of fallen into that role where the claps are more like pity claps. And just watching him play, it's difficult. You could see his body is laboring. He does this every year where he pushes himself almost too hard and tries to get to the Masters and almost aggravates something else in the process. And so I think you have to ask yourself long-term success, what are we looking at from Tiger Woods? I think, in his eyes, he definitely wants to win another major. I don't think that's in the cards. I was watching a video this morning from Phil Mickelson's major at 50 years old. And if Phil could do it at 50, then Tiger could do it at 50. Absolutely. But I just don't think, given the talent in the game, like, Tiger might have the confidence to win, but if you were to put him in a four-man scramble with Scotty Scheffler, Rory McIlroy, and Bryson DeChambeau, like Tiger's coming in fourth in that. Absolutely. There are a lot of really good golfers in the field right now where Tiger's not going to be able to compete with at this stage. And it's sad to say, I don't like saying it, but it's kind of the reality of where he's at right now. And so I think that if he wants to go for win number 83, if he wants to try and first off, if he wants to just keep playing competitive golf on the PGA Tour, he needs to be in a place where he is not playing one tournament every 3 months and not aggravating something in the process. I think he needs to fully. I think he needs. I would if I were Tiger Woods right now. I'm very much not. You should see me on the driving range. But if I were Tiger Woods, I would try to maybe just take the Masters off this year and um, just make sure the body is fully ready to go so that you can begin playing. Like Tiger Woods has not played in a non-major event since was it maybe 2024 Riviera? Um, I feel like that's probably the last we've seen him on like a regular PGA Tour event that wasn't a major. And so if he wants to keep playing on the PGA Tour, he needs to be in a spot where he's not going to just play one event and then disappear for 3 months. He needs to be able to keep getting those competitive reps. And I think, we've seen that on the Champions Tour. And like or we that's why we want him to compete on the Champions Tour because he's able to, he'll never take a cart on the PGA. He kind of dug himself that hole a few like more than a few years ago. So even though everybody and their mother wants him to, he will never ride a cart on the PGA Tour. That's just that. But the Champions Tour allows him to take the cart, and it would be a great way to like sort of get those competitive reps back and maybe be back for the US Open, be back for the PGA, the Open Championship. So if of course you can't tell Tiger Woods not to compete at the Masters. He's obviously if he's able to walk, he will be competing at the Masters. And so if anything, the fact that he played tonight means that he probably is going to play at the Masters. But right now, I think we're getting to that point where I don't really know what's next for Tiger Woods at this stance. Um, is he, the longer this goes where he's sort of rushing back to play the majors, the more he starts to look like a ceremonial golfer out there. And the less chance we see of, because I thought like before the car accident, I thought, he had the surgery and I thought could possibly get back to 2019 levels of just, the potential was there. He was coming off of I think he made the 12 or was it a 10 on hole 12 at Augusta and then birdied 5 of 6 to finish. So the talent was very much there. It was just like getting healthy and getting to a point where he could contend. And then the car accident happened, and I feel like that changed the course of his career forever. And so we kind of have to temper our expectations on Tiger Woods in the future. But so I'm a firm believer. I said, and I have this tweet bookmarked to hopefully come back to one day. I said when he was playing his first round after the car accident, I think he stuck it to like 3 feet on the third hole of Augusta National. It was the par three. And I instantly tweeted out, I said, if Tiger can walk, Tiger can win. And I believe that the talent is so like even just like looking at the swings tonight, like how difficult it is to hit the green from 280 yards out with a 3 wood, and he almost did it. Like the talent is very much there. It's just a question of whether or not he can walk, whether or not he can play 4 rounds of golf pain-free. And to me, I think that's the most important. I think pain-free is the most important word. Um, that is that's where we're at with Tiger Woods right now. And I think just the fact that he's unable to play, that it's taken him this long to even play in a TGL match kind of says where he's at right now. But I don't think he would play tonight if he wasn't seriously considering playing in the Masters. And so I think if you were to ask me right now if I were to put money on whether or not Tiger will play in the Masters, I think he absolutely will. But I think it's a question of what he's actually going to do and whether or not he can stay healthy. And so all in all, I was very impressed with Tiger Woods tonight. I thought the game looked very well, and so I'm pretty sure we will see him at Augusta, and I'm rooting for him. I think I truly do believe that at some point in his life he will have win number 83. It's just a question of how he does it. It's just a question of whether the body cooperates, where he's at with his game, and whether or not he can stay healthy. So all in all, I think the future is improving for Tiger Woods, and I'm hoping we do see him at the Masters, and I'm hoping we can see a somewhat competitive version of Tiger Woods because this is the last point I will say was um, when Tiger gave his press conference after the car accident, in his first Masters after the car accident. It was Stephen A. Smith. It immediately cut to First Take on ESPN, and it was Stephen A. and Kendrick Perkins, I think. And Kendrick Perkins said, Tiger Woods is like bacon. You can have a cheeseburger, you can have a salad, you could have eggs in the morning. You don't need the bacon, but bacon's pretty good, and everything's better with bacon. And so, in the same sense, the PGA Tour, you have so many bright players in the PGA Tour. You have Scotty Scheffler, Rory McIlroy, Justin Thomas, so many players on the PGA Tour. The talent is obviously there, but Bacon's pretty good. Like, if you have Tiger Woods playing in those ranks, it instantly elevates everything. So, a healthy Tiger is a great thing for the PGA Tour. So, that's pretty much my assessment of TGL and Tiger Woods. Pay attention tomorrow. We will have our preview of the Texas Children's Houston Open tomorrow. We'll have our picks posted. We'll have coverage throughout the rest of the week, and we'll be recapping, or excuse me, we'll be previewing in our episode. We'll be previewing PGA, Corn Ferry, LPGA, DP World Tour, you name it. We're covering it. So pay attention to that episode, reaching our publishing tomorrow. And for this emergency episode of Center Cup, I'm Nick Newmeyer. Have a good rest of your night.